Welcome back to Discover Janesville. This is Yuri Rashkin. Dennis Hughes, welcome to Discover Janesville. Tell me, what is your involvement with the Janesville School District? Why you have such interest in their elections?
Well, I'm a staff representative for Local 938 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. So I represent the support staff at the school district. So it's in the best interest of the employees to have a school board that represents them, or at least considers their concerns when they're making their decisions for the school district. So it's just part of my due diligence to look into signatures and to make sure the election process and the rules are followed correctly.
How long have you been in this position?
I've only been in this position for, I think it's 7 months now. So it's been relatively short. I've been working for AFSCME since January of last year. So just 1 year with AFSCME.
What made you interested in working for AFSCME?
Well, I didn't realize I was interested in working for AFSCME necessarily. I went to Marquette Law School. I studied sports law at Marquette Law School, so I was really interested in labor law and also sports stadium development. So that was what my plan was to go into, but I graduated actually the spring of 2011 when the protests started in Madison. So that's what really taught me a lot about politics in Wisconsin and really around the nation. I think Wisconsin politics are a microcosm for the problems we have nationwide. And so I pretty much left my career in sports law before it even started and started organizing. So I've been organizing for about almost 4 years before I took over here at AFSCME.
I can only surmise that sports attorneys make more money than union organizers. Is that, you're comfortable? I mean, I'm not asking, are you making enough? I'm saying, what made you make this switch? This is big.
No, I'm not making enough money. I haven't made enough money since I left law school, and it was definitely a sacrifice I made on my part. But I think it's a necessary sacrifice because even if I went into law, I mean, my job won't probably be there 10 years from now because of the way the economy is going. So I really realized after the Madison protests that organizing is really the only solution for the problems that we have, and so I really jumped headfirst into that. And so I really haven't made up the money that I really need to be able to pay off my student loans, which are over $200,000. But I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm especially happy to be representing the people I'm representing because they work so hard and they've faced so many cuts since Act 10. So pretty much
this was the first election that you were actually locally that you've been involved with.
No, not. I was actually involved last spring. So before I became a staff representative for these employees here, I was actually a political organizer for AFSCME. So I was working in the spring elections last year. So
what made you want to look and examine the signatures this time around versus last time?
Well, examining signatures in an election is normally standard practice. Normally, I think people would say that it's more normal to be seen in fall elections with state representatives and Senate candidates because they require many more signatures than the local candidates. But here, even though there's such a low threshold for getting on the ballot for school board, only 100 signatures, the incumbent candidates that were running only collected 102 and 103 signatures respectively. So when you see that as someone that has experience in politics, you realize that there are probably problems with those signatures, and it's very likely that they aren't actually eligible for the ballot. And when you look at the nomination paper and signature gathering process, I look at it as a competency test for public office. And so if you can't do the basic requirements and reach the very low threshold of signatures, I don't really think that you deserve to be the person representing the people in the district that you're running for.
It's interesting because when the story broke in social media, the comments that I've seen were from people who were not particularly connected with politics or anything, basically agreeing with you, which is that if you can't fit that basic threshold of getting qualified signatures, you probably shouldn't be in public office. And yet this is something that happens very rarely. And did you identify the two individuals that you were disqualified as the ones that you decided to go after, or were you checking signatures for everyone?
Well, I was basically checking signatures for everyone. I looked at all the signatures. I mean, I do have there's one candidate that I have my full support behind, and that would be Carla Quirk, who is a county worker that does support the workers' rights because she realizes that when the workers in the district are paid a fair wage, then the rest of the community benefits because those wages are spent in the the community. So I did support that candidate, but even if I did want to look into her signatures, she submitted the maximum 200 signatures, and 189 of those were found to be valid by the clerk. So there was never an issue where she could have been kicked off the ballot. With the other three candidates...
Why not? You could have looked closer. She could have made some mistakes, or...
Well, like I said, it's a very simple process, and the rules are very clear. So
and she followed the rules.
Absolutely, and most candidates
Great.
do follow the rules. And so it's really just doing my due diligence as a staff representative to look into these signatures. And so the other three candidates, I didn't necessarily want to get rid of all three. One of the candidates is a moderate school board incumbent. The president of the school board, Greg Ardrey, I'd say, is a very reasonable school board member and thoughtful. I would say he and David DiStefano, even though I don't agree with them on every issue, I would say they're both hardworking and thoughtful school board members. So I didn't go into the signature review process with an axe to grind. I really did just want to examine the signatures and see what came up. And so I looked at those three other candidates, and Diane Ayers, she submitted 127 signatures. So I didn't think we would really have an opportunity to challenge her signatures, but immediately upon examining them, I realized that she just didn't even meet the minimum requirements initially. She didn't have a printed name next to each signature, so you couldn't necessarily identify who the person was signing. And so her signature should never have been accepted in the first place. So I immediately challenged hers when I started looking at these signatures.
You know, I will say what's ironic is that this is, maybe I'm counting wrong, but third or fourth time that Ms. Ayers is running.
Yes, I mean, she's either very interested in and wants to be a public servant, or she has some other interest in being on the school board. And I think if you look at her signatures, you can see the people that are supporting her, and that would be one of the current school board members, Bill Soderman. I think his entire family signed her signatures, and they were all signed within only a couple days of the deadline. So it seemed like she was a last-minute candidate that was being put up by one of the other more powerful school board members. So it was pretty clear if you look at the signatures.
So you really went, you're saying that, if I understand correctly, that you went into this with the idea of seeing who are eligible candidates and be prepared to basically challenge everybody. And you saw that those two people that didn't do the paperwork in a way that, well, I guess the district agreed with you, and took those two individuals off the ballot regardless almost of how you feel about them politically?
Exactly. And I really don't even have an interest in removing these candidates from the ballot. I mean, there were 4 candidates running for 3 spots, so there was going to be an election. Obviously, an election is healthy for the community, so voters get to hear about the issues that are happening, and so everyone wants an election. And honestly, part of my job was trying to find and recruit a candidate, another progressive candidate, to run for the school board, and I failed in my job to find that candidate. And so I don't even necessarily have someone that I would even want to run as a write-in candidate. I just wanted to examine the signatures because that's just part of my job.
All right. So tell us what happened.
Well, so after I had complained about Diane Ayers' signatures, which were very obviously incorrect, I moved on to look at the other 2 incumbent candidates' signatures. There were issues with both, and I could have potentially challenged both, but there are different levels of certainty that you can challenge a signature, and so I decided not to challenge the incumbent Greg Ardrey's signatures, even though I could have, honestly. But DiStefano's signatures, basically the issue with his was for each nomination paper, and if you sign one, you know, there's a header portion, and then there's a space for actually signing the signatures. And so what David DiStefano had done was mistakenly, he wrote the incorrect jurisdiction on the header of his nomination papers. And so this is what I was going to be complaining about. Basically, he wrote, for the office he was running for, he wrote school board. And then you have to check off either that you're running in a branch, a district, or a seat. He checked off seat. And then for jurisdiction, he checked off Janesville. And so, as you know, Janesville has 2 school districts within the city, both the school district of Janesville and then the school district of Milton. in the northwest portion of Janesville. So that mistake led to a likelihood of confusion for voters where they didn't know exactly which school board they were signing petitions for. And so that was my complaint. And honestly, that complaint alone, I don't think that if it went up to appeal to the Government Accountability Board, it necessarily would have taken him off the ballot. There's always a presumption of keeping someone on the ballot. And so it's really, that's not even the real issue. The real issue is the cover-up, and that's usually what takes down these administrations that are corrupt, like this one.
You really did go to law school, didn't you?
I did go to law school. I went to Notre Dame undergrad. I studied history, mostly of the civil rights movement, and then I went to Marquette Law School and studied, like I said, labor law and sports law. And I also actually, fun fact, was in the first class taught by Senator Russ Feingold. So that gave me a little primer in campaign finance law and the corruption that we're seeing across the country. And so that was another thing that got me involved in politics pretty quickly.
What was it like to be in his class?
It was amazing. The amount of knowledge that he has and the insight that he has is unmatched, obviously. And he's an expert lawyer, and now he's obviously over in Africa. He's an expert on foreign policy. And so he just told a lot of war stories along with learning a lot about the U.S. Senate. So it was an incredible experience.
Are you looking forward to him running in 2016?
I can't wait.
Look, well, hopefully, that kind of thing.
I can't wait. Like I said, I love to see a good election and a close race. And obviously, I think if Russ Feingold runs against Ron Johnson in a presidential year, it's going to be a landslide. So for that reason, it's a little discouraging. You would like to see more open exchange of ideas. But I love Russ Feingold, and he should never have left the Senate. I think he's one of the all-time great senators.
All right. So how did the school district react to your requests?
Well, I told them before I even filed an official complaint that I was going to be filing a complaint against the incumbent candidate, David DiStefano, and I told them what the issue was. And so I was, as I was writing up my complaint, I realized that not only did he make that mistake on jurisdiction, he also didn't put page numbers, and neither did the candidate Diane Ayers, even though on the back of each candidate form it says clearly you have to have page numbers. So I requested that the assistant clerk put page numbers on the pages, and so rather than put the page numbers on those pages in front of me, she asked to take the pages with her. And so she said she was eating lunch, and so I trust her. Her name's Deborah Blazer. She's a district employee, but she serves as the assistant school board clerk. And so she asked to take them with her while she was eating lunch, and I had no problem with it because I think she's an honest person generally. And so when she came back about 20 minutes later, the missing information that I was going to be challenging, it was actually added. So either the assistant board clerk or I believe the superintendent or one of her staff members, possibly her secretary, Denise Jensen, added information. And so, like I said, that you have to check off a box for either branch, jurisdiction, or branch, district, or seat number. He checked off seat. But what had happened was someone at the district wrote in the district's official district number in that box. So Diane Ayers, for example, if you look at her nomination papers, she checked off the box that said district, and then she wrote the district number in the box. What DiStefano had done was check off the box of seat and then left that box blank. But someone at the district added that district number, which would have made no sense for candidate DiStefano to do because it was very clear that he checked off seat. If he was intended to write the district number, he would have checked off district and written the number. So it's very obvious, and the handwriting is totally different on that section of his header. And so when they dropped off that paper, I just could not believe my eyes. I had been checking those signature papers for over 2 hours, looking up all the addresses, making sure all the names were people that lived in the district. And so when they just added that information so brazenly, it was very obvious to me that they didn't care that I knew, and that they intended to basically keep him on the ballot by whatever means necessary.